First of all, I just want to welcome you all and thank you for serving on the turnaround plan committee. In terms of what I would like to do today, and first of all, I think I've met most of you, but there are some faces that I've only connected with over email. I'm Ventura Rodriguez, so I've been serving as interim chair of the Lawrence Alliance for Education for about 14 months now. So it's been a little while now. And I've been on the board from its inception. So I've worked with, Noemi, Pat, superintendent, I mean, really the whole team since the LAE was formed about 3.5 years ago. So as I've said to a few folks as we were waiting, thank you all for agreeing to serve on this committee. We think it's a really important role for the district in terms of setting out its continued course for student achievement. And so really wanting to make sure that we're working with a group of stakeholders that allow the board to think about, how we continue to get feedback on the renewed turnaround plan. So I'm going to go through a presentation that just tries to ground us in here's the context and try to make sure we're on the same page. And it was helpful for me working with folks from DESE and the superintendent, just to, again, make sure that I understand sort of exactly how we got to where we're at and where are we. So that's partly what I'll try to cover in the first part. And then we'll spend the bulk of the time in discussion with you all, really trying to get your perspective on a couple of key questions. And they include helping to identify the community partners who we should be prioritizing, scheduling, sort of thinking about how we engage with to get feedback. And then 2, getting some concrete ideas around just the questions like we're going to be asking our stakeholders in terms of input for the plan. So that's the goal. I've been told that pretty much everyone here knows each other except me. I do want to, for a second, also Brianna, just introduce Brianna. She's working with DESE and is supporting the district. So she works closely with the superintendent and her team, and then also the LAE, just in terms of providing support to the district and to the board. Is it true and everyone knows each other? If not, I'm happy to do some introductions, little icebreaker, I don't know.
I would say yes, Ventura, and it's not a bad idea just to do a little quick whip around if you're good with that idea.
Let's do a whip around. So I'm going to model it. So Ventura here, I am interim chair and board member of the LAE. I'm going to pass it to Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Mariano, a member of the LAE board, and I also serve on the school committee as a representative from District E.
Who are you going to pass it to, Pat?
All right, Naomi, you're up.
Hi, my name is Noemi Custodia, member of the LAE and also vice president of the Lawrence Campus and Community Relations at Northern Essex Community College. And I will pass it to Melissa Spash.
Hi, good morning, Melissa Spash. I'm newly here in the central office as an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction and spent the last 8 years as a principal in the district and before that a teacher. So I'm really excited to be here.
You got to pass it, Melissa.
I'm tagging Kimberly.
Thanks. I am Kimberly Barry. I am the proud president of the Lawrence Teachers Union, and I am a literacy and ELL teacher on leave. So I'm very happy to be here. And I will pass it to Yaritza.
Good morning. My name is Yaritza Rizzo. I am a parent of 2 beautiful LPS students, and I'm also the chair to the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And I'm gonna pass it to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone here. I'm trying to flip through names. Glenn.
Hi, everybody. Lane Glenn, president of Northern Essex Community College. Have been involved in a number of different ways in the turnaround effort over the last 10 years. Good to be here with all of you. And I'm going to pass it off to Brianna.
Hey everyone, Brianna Higgins. I'm a targeted assistance manager working with Lawrence from the Department of Education. I'll pass it to Cynthia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cynthia Paris, the proud superintendent of the Lawrence Public Schools. And let's make sure, Maria Campuzano.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maria Campuzano from the Lawrence Public Schools. I'll be assisting Superintendent Paris and also Ms. Higgins with meetings coordinations.
Great. I won't put him on blast. I think we got David on that LPS media running things. Always appreciate you. And then Lauren, is that Lauren Wu on the line?
Hi, yep, I'm here.
Great. Lauren,
hi
you want to
everyone,
say?
sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know how to change my name. I'm joining from my phone, but my name is Lauren Wu. I'm with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and also work closely with Ventura and Brianna here at DESE, and work to support the superintendent and the Lawrence Public Schools.
Great. Thank you all. And again, we're waiting just for Jess, so she'll join in a second, but I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know Jess. So, all right, so I'm going to jump in and just try to, again, provide some context, some grounding for us. I'd say throughout, if you have questions, like please don't hesitate to ask them. I'm going to go on my presenter mode, so I'm going to share my screen. So it'll be a little hard for me to see everyone, so don't worry about taking yourself off mute and just interrupting me and say you have a question, and then we'll go into a discussion. So let me share my screen here. All right, thumbs up. Can you see that? Great. Let's do a slideshow. All right, so let's see if I can exit my full screen. All right, here we go. So just as a quick overview in terms of what is a turnaround plan, why are we doing it? So when a district is identified as chronically underperforming in the old language of the department, level 5, part of what governs the district and sort of sets out the course of improvement is the district's turnaround plan. And so this turnaround plan is important because it sets out the district's improvement plan, but it also becomes the legal mechanism through which the receiver can act and has the authority to act to make adjustments, changes to different components of the day-to-day operation in the district. The plans are for 3 years. The first one was 2012. It was renewed in 2015. They are for 3 years. The LAE voted in 2019 to renew the turnaround plan. And just want to pause there for a second. We'll talk about this more, but you really have a couple of options. One is to create a brand new plan. So saying, you know what, we need to go back to the drawing board and, sort of identify brand new strategies, like how are we going to move the district forward? The LAE, working with the district, decided that the plan itself, the strategies were the right ones, but we do need to renew them in the sense of, we have the broader strategies, but what are the new initiatives or how are we continuing to move the work? I'd refer you to the high-level summary that we shared with you. And just as a reminder, the high-level strategies are expanded time, strategic use of data, high expectations for academic achievement is number 1. Number 2 is recruitment, retention, and cultivation of great people and partners. Number 3 is strengthening support and engagement for students beyond academics. So it really speaks to the commitment on enrichment and other opportunities. And 4, really with this open architecture approach, increased school autonomy coupled with accountability for improved student academic success. So in working with the LAE board and the superintendent in the district, the board voted to keep those strategies. So saying this is, this outline, this plan, those are the right strategies, but we have to update them now. We have to update them for our new context and, where the district is at. And so 2019, we voted. There was a community engagement process begun, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when COVID hit, we had to pause a bit, or we decided to prioritize, a lot of the ongoing work, the day-to-day things that were critical for continuing to operate the district for our students. And so we paused this process and are now picking it up, starting today. Again, this is just a little more background on what I said. So typically what happens in a district under state receivership is the commissioner and the receiver jointly create a turnaround plan to promote rapid improvement of the district and students. And so the commissioner has been a part of the process throughout. And, in this case here, it's the receiver is the LAE board. So we as a board are the receiver. And so, the board is working in partnership with the district to, again, renew the plan. And adoption of the renewed plan will require 2/3 approval of the LAE and then ratification by the commissioner. And that's based on our LAE bylaws. Again, just reiterating that the renewal approach, which is what the LAE adopted, is keeping the core strategies, the pillars, the things that I read that were in the 2015 plan, but we have to update all of the initiatives, the benchmarks, that we are now using because we've made some progress and that's great. So now our benchmarks are different and we're setting out new strategies and initiatives rather to get us there. And, what's sort of unique about the renewal process is we keep some of those pillars, those strategies in place. The initiatives are different, the benchmarks are different, but again, we're leaving the strategies and pillars because what we're saying is we still think those are the right ones to help move our district forward. So the purpose of the plan is defining just the overarching goals and strategies for improvement. And it's a 3-year period. And the goal here is on rapid academic improvement of students. So they are actions that we think as a board and a district will allow us to provide those opportunities for students to support rapid academic achievement and improvement. And it does, like I said earlier, provide the legal authority for the receiver and the superintendent to make changes as it relates to the educational experience for students. And so, just in terms of then sort of, if this provides the overarching strategies, overall plan, a lot of the detail now of how we do the work comes in the form of the school operational plan. This is the plans that schools create in terms of, how are they going to meet the needs of their students on a yearly basis. There's a process that, they go through at the school level. It does reach the board through the budgeting process, which is about, how are we allocating resources to essentially live out the work that, our schools are doing. And so how do we ensure that we're matching our budget so that that budget actually becomes a true reflection of the operational plan and the strategies that our schools are adopting. And then finally, the earned autonomy framework is our current attempt to better define, we talk about an open architecture model, autonomy. We need to both define what are the types of autonomies that are available to schools and districts, and what does the internal sort of intra-district review of data and performance look like that then triggers which autonomies schools have access to, and how the district works with schools that may need a little bit more support. So this is furthering the commitment to autonomy, but in a way that now tries to put a little bit more just of a framework around how autonomy operates in the district. Just an overview of the process. So superintendent, recommendation to the LAE on renewal was done. Step 1, we consulted with the commissioner, superintendent on the recommendation. So that was done. The LAE voted, that was done. And then we started creating a vision for community-wide process. And that process began. So we engaged with a partner, Great Schools Partnership, that allowed us to start getting feedback from community members on the process. But as I said, that had to pause. And so what we're really trying to do here is make sure that we come back to that and ensure that we have enough input from stakeholders to allow us to really reflect on the current plan, and does it capture sort of the direction that multiple stakeholders feel the district needs to continue on or improve on to better support students. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today and rolling out in the next couple of months. And then the what's here is step 5 is then executing that process, like continuing to get feedback. And, you know, as the board, we will look at that feedback with the district and then, you know, think about if and how we need to make adjustments to the plan. And then the goal for me is to get the LAE to then vote on a final plan in November of this year. So it's, you know, we're already in August. I think we can do this. It's aggressive, but it also gives us a couple of months for feedback, which I think should be, you know, enough time. But that's the current plan for how we move forward. And then just a little bit of more context here, and give me 1 second. This is Jess. I bet she's having issues with the login. Give me 1 second. Yep, give me 1 second. Let me, Superintendent or someone, can you forward that link, please, to Jess?
Yep, we'll do right now.
Yep, she's been waiting to get in, unfortunately.
Yep. Okay, it's in her inbox.
Okay. I'm gonna give her 30 seconds so I can talk about this slide while she's on as well.
I'm on now.
Oh, thanks.
I've been emailing people for 15 minutes and I just got the link in my inbox. I had no link from yesterday or this morning.
Yeah, apology, Jess. We found that you weren't the only one. We ran into some technical issues here with the right link, and so apologies for that.
Okay. All right.
Jess,
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we're here. We were going through just a little bit of context setting, and which you'll be familiar with, but I'm going to back us up to this slide just to again make sure we're all seeing it. And so, you know, saying on this slide is that we, as a LAE, you know, the superintendent recommended to the LAE, and then the LAE voted on basically to approve a renewal of the plan, where we keep the strategies in place around, you know, our expanded time, use of autonomy, recruitment and retention of great people, things like that, but that we need to update the initiatives that are underneath each of those strategies, and we actually need to set new targets and benchmarks for, you know, what we're looking to achieve. And so where we're at now is step 4, where we created a community engagement process with Great Schools Partnership, but that was interrupted. And so what we want to do here is make sure, you know, we have the benefit of looking back at what was done, but what else do we need to do? And I think there were some large gaps around talking to students, to families, I think to more teachers, you know, and so the goal is to figure out, you know, here in step 4, you know, who else do we want to make sure we have a chance to engage with in order for us to feel like the plan has received the input, you know, that the board will consider if it wants to make any additional changes before we move to then eventually approve it, which I'm hoping to do by our November meeting. So we will have a third party helping us conduct the community engagement process. So similar to last time, they will help you know, set up focus groups, either in person and or virtual, you know, other ways. And so that'll be a huge help for us to be able to help organize and design that process, but we'll have a lot of support to be able to do that. All right, the next thing I wanted to do, and again, thanks to folks who've helped frame this, is that, so if you look at the blue sort of perimeter here of this circle-ish, kind of an oval, but like the turnaround plan is what provides sort of the overarching framework. And again, these are the core strategies around autonomy and accountability and support and engagement, our people and partners, time, data, expectations. That's sort of the overarching frame for the district. The work, a lot of like, you know, how we move the work on a day-to-day, this also talks to some pretty major initiatives that we've been working with and the district's been leading over the last several years. So we do have the district goal setting process where the superintendent presents to us as a board the annual goals. We use those to drive things like our budgeting process. And so, you know, those things are in alignment already to the elements in the turnaround plan. We also went through the Student Opportunity Act planning, which, you know, with the new infusion of resources from the state, we went through a process that similarly, you know, asked for feedback around what are the highest leverage strategies. And again, we did that within the frame of the turnaround plan priorities. And then finally, the Portrait of a Graduate, which is a process that, you know, we've begun, that it continues, but at the end of the day is trying to, in many ways, bring to life, you know, what the turnaround plan does, which is provide the pillars, the overarching strategies. But this work of the turnaround plan connects to, again, very important components of the day-to-day of the district, including the goals, the Student Opportunity Act, Portrait of a Graduate. So we have the benefit of also seeing that feedback, and we've used that feedback, you know, to you know, inform like our Student Opportunity Act planning and Portrait of a Graduate. So I think it's important to get additional feedback specifically on the turnaround plan components. But I, you know, share this slide because, again, I think we're at a place where we also want to make sure we're looking at other pieces of feedback that we've received, you know, to inform, you know, the renewal of this plan. So before, this is where we're going to spend most of the time, but I know I presented a lot of information. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can see most of you. Happy to, if there are any questions or, you know, just any comments, would love to speak about those now. Because again, the goal here is just to ground us, and you have the slide, just to ground us in where are we and, you know, just where have we come? And then most of the conversation will be around how do we engage stakeholders? What do we want to ask them? Sort of that sort of thing. Lane?
So I know most of the conversation today will be around the community engagement piece of it. Internally, though, before we get to that, I know pre-pandemic, there was a lot of time spent developing the earned autonomy framework and some questions being looked at in terms of the capacity for the schools and professional development in order to understand the framework. Where does the district feel it's at relative to moving forward with that? Because I know that was one of the really exciting features of all of this and a lot of potential there. I'm just curious, since I haven't heard in a little while, where the district is around that earned autonomy framework piece.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that, but Melissa, Superintendent, you want to jump in. So the process continues. So we've actually been engaging over the past year with the vendor CPRL, who's been helping us design the framework. You know, they've been, working with us a lot in terms of like defining the autonomies, defining sort of the measures that, you know, we'd be looking at internally. And that process was, which I thought was really cool, was, you know, we had two committees that were looking at those things, and they all included teachers, staff members, you know, throughout the process. I understand that CPRL presented again this week to staff that's now already back in the district, you know, principals, leaders, to let them know, you know, sort of where we're at. And the goal is to bring it back to the board, you know, sort of the current state of it. And there will be some action that we'll probably want the board to take to start phasing in, you know, this work. So I anticipate that likely at the September meeting, we'll do you know, a rollout in terms of what's coming this year. But yeah, that work continues. Melissa, Superintendent, if there's anything else you'd like to add?
I think you've captured that well, Ventura. Thank you.
Great,
I guess, Lane, just to sort of answer, it remains a priority for the district, for the board. And we feel like, yeah, we've done good work this year. getting us to a place where it feels like now the starting point, you know, because we've done all this work to start building the system.
I knew there was a
But,
lot of excitement around it. It's good to hear
yeah.
that we're in that place. So thank you for that.
And I have to say, I mean, you know, I've been a part of community engagement processes a lot for different things we're doing. And I think that was the current one that I've been engaged with. I was on the committees and Pat was as well. And just the voices of our educators just push so well, you know, like it was the voices of our teachers, our principals, and really I thought it was a diverse group of people in many different ways, including roles and experience. And so hearing those voices, you know, and the questions that people asked, I thought were really, really helpful in getting us to the current drafts that we have.
So I'm sorry, Ventura, what exactly are you asking for feedback on right now?
I'm just asking for questions on what I covered,
Okay.
which was basically
On what
like
you've
how we
covered
got
so
here,
far.
like what we're hoping
Yeah.
to do, like, yeah, any.
Gotcha.
And if not, happy to take us forward to the, I don't know,
Yeah.
veggie burger or the meat. I don't know, like what people feel like of the meeting, which is about talking about these core questions. And so let me share my screen again. All right. All right, so it might be worth just spending a couple of minutes reviewing the engagement that did happen. So again, like I said, we started the process with Great Schools Partnership. And so I'm wondering, you know, to put you on the spot a little bit, Superintendent, you know, Brianna, Lauren, folks who were very close to the work that Great Schools Partnership was doing. I think it would be helpful to just hear a little bit around, from your perspective, you know, the work, who was engaged with. We know we have to prioritize students, families, and teachers because those voices, you know, weren't, we need more, I think, information from them. But if you all would love to, or one of you could just give a little bit of an overview of like, what was the work like that Great Schools Partnership already did?
Yep, happy to do that. Those were the stakeholder groups that were included with respect to engagement with Great Schools Partnership. It was families, students were the two groups, and we even talked to teachers at that point. And so, as you had mentioned, it did get interrupted, but we were able to capture and then feedback and then use that feedback towards the draft, towards a draft. In addition, we also incorporated community feedback via the SOA process,
right?
Which in turn, you will see throughout the document expresses some of the needs and initiatives and strategies as communicated by stakeholders.
So Ventura, can I ask a question?
Please.
So one of the things I'm wondering is, because I do feel like while the turnaround engagement process did get radically interrupted, and we weren't able to do nearly as many focus groups and meetings as we had wanted to, there was, as the superintendent just said, substantial feedback on very similar questions that was conducted through the SOA process in particular. And I guess one of the things I'm wondering is whether we consider that, you know, we have enough feedback on the substantive issues, but also whether we want, I do feel like it would be important to touch base back with, like, you know, some maybe modest but good group of students and families and teachers, because I think we're in a different space than we were when those processes were going on, right? Because all of that feedback and interaction happened pre-COVID or in the very beginning stages of COVID. And now we've been through a year or more of COVID, and we're kind of looking to bounce back from that. And I feel like it might be good to have some meetings or conversations where we reflect a bit on the past year and what it has taught us and what we might have learned about what we want to do going forward and how it might influence the turnaround plan goals.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, like I agree with that a lot, Jess, in the sense that, you know, again, we held community engagement for SOA for the, you know, that I think the Portrait of a Graduate that actually informed the draft that we currently sent you all, you know, sort of as the overview.
Yeah.
And so I think it's now going back, right, like a year and a half later, you know, and saying, this is our plan, this is what informed it, but I think through the questions now, again, like, are these the right strategies, or given your experience, are there other initiatives that you think could help us, you know, move on some of these strategies? I think that's where, you know, whereas the first process is designed was sort of like, tell us what's important to you and, you know, we'll help use that to shape the turnaround plan. We actually now have a draft plan based on all the input we've received. And now it's more, does the plan capture, you know, what you think is most critical to help move the district forward? So
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think we should base it off the draft of the plan, but it's more like maybe we add a question under the suggested questions that are like, you know, are there any learnings from the past year that, you know, you think it would be important to address in the plan or that aren't currently captured? I know it does say like, what do you feel is missing? But I do think we should ask something that's specifically asking folks to reflect on the past year and what that, how that might inform us going forward.
great. And I've asked, just so you all know, Brianna to help capture some of these questions and things. So I'll circle back with the team on those. But thanks for sharing those, Jess. Other thoughts around questions or, you know, sort of areas of feedback that you all think would be helpful?
Ventura?
Yep.
If I remember correctly, and maybe Jess could remember this also, when Great Schools started working with us, there was an effort to contact the elected city officials too for input on the turnaround plan. And I think that's an important group that we need to include.
I think that was one of the few groups that they were actually able to meet with before, you know, everything hit the fan. Am I mistaken about that?
I think so, Jess. I'm trying to remember, but I remember that they did contact some of the city council members, and there were some conversations, and I don't know whether they conducted focus groups or did one-on-one telephone interviews. I don't know if that information is located someplace or if Great Schools has it, but I think it's an important group to include when you talk about community engagement and community members.
I think they also reached out to the state delegation.
Yep.
That is correct. You're remembering correctly. GSP in their summary report did indicate that they have spoken to leaders of nonprofit organizations in the community, private sector businesses, community college leaders, school committee members, and members of both the city council and the state delegation.
Yeah.
That's great. I think from my vantage point, and apologies, I know I'm sharing this, but I'm also adding my own thoughts. But from my vantage point, I think the priority is, you know, students, families, teachers. We did some work, but I think we want to do a little more. Like, you know, I think that would be important. I guess the other thing I would say is, depending on the format, I mean, in the past, and I'm going back to other community engagement processes we've done, there's the focus group approach, which I think is the more, you know, sort of time intensive, but also like an important type of touch point. I also wonder if we, you know, offer some sort of other, you know, survey or opportunity to weigh in, you know, in writing that we can just more broadly make available as well. We've done that in the past with other things that might just be, even though we've already talked to a lot of different stakeholders, might just open up the door to another way for people to weigh in. You know, and then we dedicate more resources on things like stakeholder groups and things like that for some of these groups that we've identified as as priorities. So I just throw that out there as for consideration. So we have some questions, and again, these were just thrown in here as a sample. I've heard Jess clearly around the experience of the last year and a half. How has that shaped, your thinking around this plan, the strategies? I mean, we'll refine the language with you. We're talking about, are these the right strategies? What do you like about the plan? What's missing? They're sort of general. Anything else that you think would be important just as we're framing out the questions in the sessions?
Maybe also a question about priorities, just because it would be good to know if there's some kind of consensus or, the turnaround plan should ideally shape how we think about allocating resources too. And so I think that just some questions around not just are these the right strategies, but if you had to prioritize certain things, what are, what from this or that you would add, would you consider the top 3 or 5 priorities for the district in terms of, meeting the turnaround goals?
Yep.
Ventura, how important is it that in consulting with the community members, the questions really elicit feedback on the existing goals? As I understood the renewal process, and I just read what was sent to me in advance of this meeting, the options are to start over again or to renew. And if it's to renew, then it's to build on what exists. Is there room there to ask what is missing, to add things, or does this need to focus on what is there now and renewing what is there now? I get that there could be shades of gray there anyway.
Yeah, it's a great question. No, sorry, Lane. It's a great question because, as we covered, the board voted to renew the plan. So there's some things that, are sort of pillars that are going to provide the outline of the plan. And when you look at the document, those are the strategies, those are the strategies that they're, the vision, this is coming from the superintendent, and, really is the work that's driving the district. And I'd say the goals at a high level are the goals that have been in the plan that when we chose to renew it, we're saying at a high level, these are still the right goals. Like we're looking at student achievement and, accountability targets, things like that. Where I think there's a lot of, where the feedback really lies is in the initiatives, like how are we doing these things? To Jess's point, I mean, I don't know, let's say, support and engagement. Like maybe people are saying, you know what, given the experience of the last year and a half or whatever, I would like to prioritize, an action or initiatives around this sort of programming. And I don't see that in this current draft of the initiatives the district is going to do with the board around support and engagement. So the areas of feedback are much more around the initiatives, the actions, and if we look from a budget perspective, like the investments, that we're going to be making to execute on this plan. That's really where we're saying, in the renewal process, that's where the feedback is mostly sought. And what we've tried to do here is incorporate things like the Student Opportunity Act planning that ask some of those questions, and the district, created a plan with the board. So we've tried to incorporate those things in here, but want to open the door now with, people looking at it through the lens of 2021, saying, are we missing any of the key actions, the initiatives, the work that we think is going to really help us reach the goals, that are in this turnaround plan.
Ventura, I do have a question or a comment. I guess, as we have been discussing the turnaround plan, from time to time, we get questions from the community as they relate to the role of the Lawrence Alliance of Education and how the district will be turned back to the city. And those are the questions that we probably will have to figure out how to address, because there is an expectation that as part of the turnaround plan, the final outcome is the school district will be turned around, will be given back to the city. And we need to figure out how to separate both, because, you know, the understanding is that the Jeff Riley is the one who decide when the school district will be turned back to the city, and is separate from this process, but it always get commingled.
Right.
Yeah, we need to bring that back, because those are the questions that as members of the board, we always get. So we have to make sure there is a message so people understand that there's a difference between the two.
No, yeah, duly noted. Really appreciate that. Just want to create some space also. Other members who maybe we haven't heard of are from as much, just if there's anything, just any thoughts in general, and it could be related to these two questions, and that's fine, but any other thoughts or anything this, you know, this making you think about? All right, it's our first meeting, so I'm not going to do cold calling. I'll leave it on people.
I can just echo everything that you guys have already said about engaging the community, right? The families, students, and teachers once again, and to continue to ask them the questions about what are their priorities, like Jess had mentioned, and what outcomes are they finding? What's their reality versus what's in the turnaround plan, right? And how we can get the resources to them directly in their classrooms, in their enrichment, as you call it, find out how many kiddos are actually in enrichment, what that looks like. These are things that I think I would echo.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Let me drill down a little bit on, because again, students, families, teachers, those are large groups. Are there existing groups that, of whom the membership are students, families, teachers that, you recommend we help identify as we're building out the engagement plan that we, directly go to? Duval's Council as an example, I think of like that, that's an existing group. For families, that could be one. Are there others, or what other ones do you all see that we should think about?
I think we should go to some of those established groups, and I recognize that it's easier to work with groups that have a formal, identity, but I also feel like it might be really valuable to try and do a couple of just open focus groups where we're trying to get the voices of students and families who don't typically or regularly participate, either in student government or in the PTOs or others, because some of those families are maybe a bit more representative of the bulk of families in the system, many of whom don't always have the time or space in their lives to engage in more formal avenues. So if we could do a little bit of both, I think that would be really great.
Yep, great. Does that resonate with people? I mean, this notion of let's go to some existing groups, but also open it up for folks who aren't part of any existing group.
Yes.
Thanks, Lane. Appreciate that.
Helping out however I
You
can.
hanging out there. I know. Thank you. All right. No, this is great.
Ventura.
Yep. Please, Pat, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, are these going to be in the form of just strictly focus groups, or are we talking about any kind of a questionnaire that would go out?
Yeah, I personally think, in the spirit of just as many avenues as possible, would like to do both. I don't think it's hard to get together a survey, a way for people to provide input in a written form, but also provide the opportunity, I would say, for some virtual and potentially in-person, focus groups. And because we're doing it during, September as well, I mean, when schools are back in session, I mean, I think there might be a way to leverage the fact that, we have students in schools and our teachers and families. So hopefully we can get, build it around some of their schedules a bit as well. So it works. So I would be in favor of some sort of survey if the group feels like that's the right approach.
Maybe an initial survey to the parents, letting them know that this is what the district is in the midst of. And if they would like to participate in either a focus group or, a Zoom group or something like that, it might, that might be the best way to go. Give them that initial introduction to what's going on and then go from there.
Great.
I just wanted to add, I think it's important, I agree with Pat, due to the fact that one of my concerns is that maybe parents or many parents don't understand the process or what is the turnaround plan. So I think focus groups would be best because it's more of an open conversation with parents, especially when we're having conversation being translated for parents. A lot can be missed in the translation. So I think focus groups are a better way of doing. And a lot of parents also just, the community has been bombarded the last year with so many surveys that parents might just kind of like, hit delete and just forget about the survey. But I think open conversations would be great. And one of my other concerns was regarding the timeline. You mentioned earlier that August and September, keeping in mind that school starts September 1st. So I just wanted to kind of know what is the district's plan as to engaging parents once school starts. How is this family engagement process that the district always has with parents? How is that going to be different, or how is that going to take place in order to have access to parents?
Let me address some of those points, and thanks so much, Eritza, appreciate it. I think to the first point of focus groups, I think, in the design of this, that was always, yes, I think we need to be making opportunities for focus groups to students, families, and teachers. And I think trying to be as robust as possible with time of day, virtual, in-person, I think will be really important. On the survey piece, I just want to make sure I understand where, offering a survey potentially is another way, and it doesn't have to be a survey. I mean, it's some way for people to record their, written feedback if they feel like that is just more appropriate or they prefer that. But I hear your points, Eritza, that we've done a lot of surveys, over the last year and a half. So I get that, but I guess just trying to understand from the group directionally, because what we're going to do here is we're going to take all this feedback, give it to the partner that's going to be helping us, and then we're going to have them create a plan that we'll bring back to you all, for feedback and, let's push here, let's do that. So that's the goal here. We're going to take all this and they're going to build the plan for us for reaction to this notion, though, of like a way to get written feedback from people, whether in the form of a survey or I don't know what else to call it, but it probably is a survey. Do we want to make that available to people, recognizing sort of the context of the last year plus and a lot of surveys we've done? I guess I'd love to get some feedback from the group if we're asking this vendor to help us design a survey as an additional way to capture information.
I mean, I agree with Jaritza that I think focus groups get you much richer, more substantive feedback and information than surveys do on something like this. And I would rather put the resources into focus groups rather than surveys and having conversations with people.
Great. How do others feel?
I feel the same way because, again, you know, parents are getting so many surveys, and not only that, there's some parents that they still have limited access to electronic messages. So I think, you know, having it as a group will be a little bit more productive. And also will encourage people to have more of a conversation. And often as people are having discussions, more ideas come up, or some other issues that one person might think is happening is shared with the other ones, and then they see that they have a common ground. I think it's more interactive. Yeah.
Kim, what do you put you on the spot a little, like for teachers again, because I just want to make sure that we're also opening enough channels for teachers, and obviously we'll prioritize stakeholder groups. But to the question of the survey, I mean, you've heard the fatigue from my families may be experiencing. Just curious your perspective on for our teachers.
I think like what Jess said, right? The survey doesn't really capture that much, but I really appreciated the focus groups that we had when we had them. I think people really were able to, have these conversations, whether they were the one-to-one conversations or in the small group and then share out. I feel like it gave a lot more information, and I would say, teachers are busy for sure, but we could get a focus group of teachers like we did last time to meet after school. I think they'd be happy to.
Okay. All right, well, I'm hearing from most people that the direction to the group is going to be help us design a process of stakeholder meetings throughout the day, different formats, because we think that's the best way to get feedback at this point, which I think makes a lot of sense. Okay, that sounds good. We have the questions that people have already asked, and we'll want to make sure, again, when we see the final plan for engagement, that gets reflected back to us. Yaritza, I want to make sure I'm not losing the second question you asked, which I think related to the timeline of this engagement process, which we'll have the vendor map out for us how it's going to happen in August, but really September. But I want to make sure, did I hear your question to be even a little broader than that around the plan for parent engagement for the start of the year for the district, or were you talking more specifically around this engagement process for feedback on the turnaround plan?
Yeah, well, actually, thinking that if we're using groups that are already established, many of those groups take off at the beginning of the school year. And also, are we using the groups that are already meeting in the schools? I know that in the past I had suggested that, one of the avenues that we can use is also the meetings that are already happening at each individual schools where they're already meeting with parents, and use that avenue to reach parents. So I was just wondering if, if there is a plan already as to, do we know if these meetings are going to be happening at the schools in person, or either are they going to keep happening virtual?
Superintendent, who would we speak with to make sure that the partner, can access just what schools are doing in terms of, meetings for September? Because it would be nice to, sort of align with some of those meetings. So who would we, who do you suggest?
Yeah, I think based on this conversation, we will bring the feedback to the vendor, to Great Schools Partnership, and let them know what we consider important priorities, sort of shaping the structure of the process. So this is really helpful to hear everybody's thinking around what would be a robust process, engaging process.
Superintendent, you're having coffee hours with grade level parents. Would it be appropriate to discuss, this is coming up, put this on your radar screen for parents, give them some sort of an introduction as to what will be coming?
Yeah, not a bad idea for me to mention it as I'm wrapping up and giving them some vision for the moving year. So in the next weeks, I will be meeting with families And, mostly this will be about back to school and health protocols and all the questions that families will have about students coming in the next couple of weeks. But yes, I'm happy to add that to upcoming events.
That's great. Okay, I guess I have one final question, because I feel like we're in a good place with sort of the format. We're going to prioritize stakeholder groups. We have some of the questions, and we will circle back, with you all with the other ones that we've heard today. We'll try to align any existing meetings that we could leverage, but also it's important to have some that are just open, and to folks who aren't a part of those groups and things like that. I just want to circle back and calibrate on our expectation with engaging groups that are not students, families, or teachers. So we did a lot of engagement, as Brianna pointed out, and superintendent, with elected officials, the business community. I mean, I feel like we got all the groups that were mentioned. We did a lot of outreach, and their suggestions definitely informed the version of the plan that is in front of us. How strongly do you all feel like, because again, the priority are these groups that I think we need to go deeper in, but how strongly do you all feel like we need to host at least some, or make available some sessions to some of those groups that we may have already engaged with on the front end?
I feel pretty strongly that given limited time and resources, I would really focus on students, families, and teachers.
Yep. I'm seeing some head nodding. Others?
I agree with Jess, but part of me still says that we can't lose sight of the community members to the elected officials. Maybe if we can have some kind of a meeting time scheduled, and who could come, and who doesn't come, well, probably it was a wrong time or something. I think we can't ignore that group of people. That's just my opinion. I mean, because we want them to be, working with us in the district. I mean, we've got a lot of things coming up with the new building, the Oliver, the LAE. So I think we need to keep those lines of communication open between the elected officials and the school department.
And actually, Pat, that's a really good point. I'm thinking also of the ARPA money that's coming down too, right? It wouldn't be a bad idea to keep those lines of communication open, and because there might also be opportunity for even additional resources for special initiatives or something. So.
Superintendent Paris, you were very helpful in making an e-introduction between Ventura and I, since we had not met during the pandemic here this past year. We also have a new executive director at the Lawrence Partnership who just started with us, George Ramirez. Prior, Derek Mitchell, our previous executive director, was in and out of this process because the partnership is probably the quickest way to get to the business community in the city at this point. I mean, Jess is involved, I'm involved, and it would probably be good for Ventura to meet George if he hasn't yet. He's only been on the job a few weeks, so perhaps you haven't. That way, when we do need additional perspective from the business community, we've got that swift route there.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, appreciate that, and happy to do that, so we can follow up. Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, I think, we've engaged a lot of these other stakeholder groups prior, which I think is great, and it's informed the plan. I think the priority will be on going deep with the students, families, and teachers, focus groups. That's really the priority. I think just strategically, what I'm hearing, like, we need to figure out a way to at least just engage some of the elected officials to make sure that they have eyes on this final plan, and at least the opportunity has been extended for, sort of a final round reaction questions. And, I'm not hearing that as the priority. I think the priority I'm hearing loud and clear is students, families, and teachers, but I also want to be sensitive to just our district context, you know what I mean, and everything everyone's already said. And so I will work with the partner to just to keep that in consideration and offer that. But what I'm hearing loud and clear is the focus is students, families, and teachers. So let me just transition to sort of next steps for this group. So I will take this information and work with the vendor to then create a plan. And so my goal is to bring that plan to you all for, final review, any input, and then we want to start executing. And so the timeline, is for us, and I can go back to the timeline slide, is to begin the engagement process, now with devising the plan, getting feedback, like really kicking into, I'd say getting feedback realistically late August, but really September, I think is going to be the bulk of that. And then the board working likely through October to look at the feedback, incorporate it into, the renewed turnaround plan draft, and then make sure it reflects, the input we've received, and then with the goal of the board voting on it in November. So for this committee in particular, I envision us meeting probably a couple of times between now, not counting this meeting, a couple of times between now and probably October. One will be, or one engagement, it could be a meeting, or if we want to do it over email, but maybe a meeting will be easier, is to review the plan, make sure, again, we're tuning that and getting it ready. And then, we'll ask the vendor to execute. And then another one will likely be towards the end, just hearing some of the feedback, from that's been gathered, and, in terms of what's going to the board, for their consideration. So I only anticipate about 2 meetings, but they will be important because you're going to help now sort of solidify the engagement process, and then on the back end review what did we hear, and make sure that you all are aware of that as well. So thank you in advance. I may ask Maria to start looking for some times already, to align to that timeline, because I know everyone's time is busy. But yeah, just really appreciate getting to know some of you I haven't had a chance to work with yet. Appreciate your input today, and just thank you for your ongoing input in this particular process. So any final words or thoughts before, look at that, I might even adjourn early. Any final thoughts or words?
I just a quick request, and I will make it work if it's better for other people in the group, but the daytime meeting times are difficult for me because they conflict with meetings and things I have for, my full-time job. So if we could do early evenings or even like late afternoon after 4 o'clock, that would really be better. I will make it work if it's a real problem for anyone else.
Thanks, Jess. And maybe as we do a poll for meeting times, we'll make sure we include times. Yeah, starting after 4, I'm hearing 4:30-ish evening.
Yeah, that for
evening.
I'm just
Yeah.
it's just a
Okay.
personal.
Yeah, no, I
request,
appreciate
but
that. Appreciate that. We're all volunteers, here. So appreciate that. All right. Well, listen. Thank you all. Here, I want to see all of you. There you go. Thank you all. Just really appreciate again your input today and ongoing. I'm really excited for the school year to welcome back all of our staff, our kiddos, and just the magic that happens in the classroom. But thank you all for your work on this. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.